Hello, thank you for being here and thank you for the opportunity to speak about, wait for it. Oh, I need to do it. Oh, shoot. No. There it is. Okay, sorry. All right, to speak to you about the Artistic Network Toolkit, or ANT for short. This is a resource I've been developing in collaboration with my co-creator, Alexis Culotta, professor of computer science here at Tulane. He is unfortunately not with us today, so I get to take all the credit. But it is a toolkit designed to facilitate the exploration of artistic networks and hopefully yield innovative insights that can lead to new research in art history and in the larger field of the humanities. So the Artistic Network Toolkit began with a problem, and the problem was the artist Raphael. Show of hands, who's heard of Raphael? Good, excellent, right? We kind of all heard of Raphael in some capacity, right? Really famous artist, right? Working in a variety of contexts, but becomes a pop culture icon, right? Celebrated over the centuries. Right now, he's being feted in New York at the Metropolitan with a massive exhibition of work. Also, again, we might know him through the lens of the Ninja Turtles, The Simpsons, all sorts of references come forward, right? So he's a familiar face, as it were, right? Next question, a little tougher. Can anyone, show of hands, if you know names, you can shout them out too. Can anyone identify a collaborator of Raphael? It's okay if you can't, right? This is the problem, right? Raphael was hugely successful in his lifetime, and that was thanks to a network of collaborators. We know this through a number of channels, primarily between the work that survives. This is one example. This is a painting from Leighton Raphael's career, The Transfiguration, and it's accompanied by some of the preparatory work that went into its creation. On the far side of the screen on the right, we have two preparatory modelli. These are full-scale preparatory drawings that would go into the finished work, right, the final stage before painting. And we'll see the name Gianfrancesco Penni there, not Raphael. And then if we look at the drawings that survive, and here they've been overlaid on top of the painting in the center of the screen, we'll see another name, Giulio Romano, and these are actual images that are then become part of the painting, right? So not just kind of like ideas on paper, but really finished rendering, so core to the production of the finished work. And actually another one of these drawings has just been reattributed to Giulio in that show in New York. So we know that they're working in the preparation. We know they're actually working in the painting too, right? At least two other artists we know are working here from X-radiographic analysis of the composition, right? So, multiple hands at work, and yet 9 times out of 10, when you see works like The Transfiguration mentioned, it's just given to Raphael, or Raphael and workshop, right? So 2 folks mentioned here, but if we dig a little deeper or cast a broader lens, we actually have a network of over 30 artists that are supporting Raphael during his peak years. So quite the industrious figure, right? Building these relationships, and yet they're very often overlooked. So that was a problem that I wanted to solve, right? And through the assistance of my collaborator in the realm of computer science, we developed a toolkit that allows for visualizations of artistic relationships. So we can explore those networks of creators, artworks, and their context, their patrons, where they're created, etc. The advantage of what we've created, and here you see a snapshot of one of our visualizations of this network of Raphaels, along with our friend, the Transfiguration from that earlier screen, comes along with a couple of key components or innovative elements. Those are the 3 C's we see on the side there. One is contextualization. We're bringing all these works together in the same space so we can think about them in conversation with each other. In the case of the Transfiguration, if we wanted to go look at all of those drawings, require a trip to 5 different countries, multiple continents. Here we can look at them all in one space, right? So just aggregating this material is significant. It's also completely customizable. You can develop your spreadsheet in this platform with whatever data, whatever metadata, entities, relationships are of interest to you and your research. And it's collaborative, so you can work with as many partners as you want in the space of this toolkit. The other real important component here, didn't fit nicely with my alliterative 3 C's, is this democratization of access to these tools. One of the biggest barriers for those in the humanities, if we have any humanists in the room, when we think about approaching digital projects, is the barriers to entry. There's a lot of really interesting platforms out there that can visualize your data and look at networks, but they have high costs, specialized software, idiosyncratic implementations, all things that can turn off humanities scholars, right? Be a barrier to access. So our goal here was to create a system that's very straightforward and intuitive, using primarily open access resources, and quite literally starting with a script-loaded Google Sheet that with a few clicks of your cursor result in your customized visualization that you can then explore. The other facet of this democratization, though, that I think is really valuable to this toolkit, and again encourages this sense of innovation, is that it creates an equal playing field. It allows for examination of artists across platforms. And I think this is really essential because particularly when we started in the realm of Raphael's network, to omit these collaborators flattens a view, right? We don't get to see the exchange, we don't get to see the collaboration, and it's in those spaces that innovation occurs artistically, right? So we can think about those relationships. Here we see the distinction between a scholarly assessment of Raphael's network on the left-hand side, which pulls these two nodes. If Polidoro de Caravaggio is one of his collaborators on the top, Raphael is down here at the bottom. Oh no, and I went the wrong way. Down here at the bottom. But if we take that lens off and we think about just the work itself, then they become close to each other once again. So we can think about how, again, we can kind of maybe remove some scholarly bias, right, as we look at these examples. We can also think more globally as well, right? Think about networks across this particular period. So we started with a case study examining the work of Raphael and his networks. Then we looked to other early modern centers. Here we see two of these case studies on the screen. On the right-hand side, we looked at networks of production in the Viceroyalty of New Spain, thinking about familial relationships, workshops, et cetera. On the left-hand side, we see a network from a similar time period, 16th to 18th century production in the Chinese export market to think about the movement of materials and ideas. And here, too, we can bring all these relationships together in a single space and also think, in these particular instances, about the genealogy of ideas, how it moves from one workshop to another circle or one medium to another. And that's just kind of illustrated on the left-hand side there with what's illuminated in the network and then the example below. We can see at the bottom a print, the text is very small, I apologize, a print by Marc-Antoine Raimondi entitled The Judgment of Paris. We see it translated next door into a porcelain service created in China. You can see the motif, the central motif from the narrative there. And I had to share this one because Marc-Antoine Raimondi's print was conveniently created in collaboration with Raphael. Not that all roads lead back to Raphael, but again, shows that kind of lineage emerging. You can also use it to explore material elements too, different facets of production or underserved, under-examined areas. On the upper left here, this is an experimentation with the toolkit looking at frescoed facades, which were very popular in cities like Rome and beyond in the early modern period. So we can think about relationships or conversations on the urban landscape. And then on the lower right-hand side, we see an exploration even more straightforwardly, materially focused. This is looking at paper types, particularly Chinese and Japanese paper that come into print circles in Europe from the 17th to 19th centuries, the movement of materials and how that becomes part of the artistic conversation. And this has been pulled into the realm of in essence, an art market analysis as well, thinking about how these paper types and print production in the contemporary art market influence sales prices and things along those lines. I wanted to highlight this one particularly because this is the subject of one of the posters that will be in the trick session tomorrow. This was work done by some of my research assistants this year, so it'll be an interesting opportunity. If you come back to attend, you can learn a little bit more about it there. So we've been able to explore some interesting aspects. We have a bigger vision, though, for what we have here, and we hope to keep innovating with it as time goes forward. We've got additional functions we want to roll into the website, or roll into the platform, rather. And we also want to think about how we continue to grow it so it can be a tool that could be used at the institutional level, whether that's academic or museological, right, cultural centers, museums, galleries, et cetera. So in addition to new tools, we're thinking about ways to integrate AI, a human AI pipeline to help develop data sets and develop, again, enhance that springboard element here to research questions. But while we have a larger vision in mind, right, we see it already as a space, again, to foster new ideas and new ways of looking at art and art history. And to that end, I recommend, if you would like to follow our QR code here, this takes you to our GitHub space that provides the code for the resource, some tutorials and background about the project, and all of these respective case studies in visualization form if you want to go and experiment. To echo Amanda's comments, it's all about collaboration. That's where innovation occurs. So we would love if you'd collaborate with us on this project. Thank you so much.
Questions? Oh.
Hi, thank you. This was lovely. I wanted to ask you more about the future implications of this work, but I'm going to make it interesting and ask if we had exposed Raphael to these kinds of collaborative support networks, how do you think that would have shaped how we see art history today?
If you would have had access to these types of visualizations?
Yes.
Oh, that's a great question. That's something I ask myself a lot, actually. What would Raphael do in our modern day? You know, again, I think this is really one of the strengths of his work. He's recognized as this essential figure. I would say he is an essential figure because he appreciated the value of these types of networks, right? Appreciating others' skills and how he could leverage those for success, right? For commercial success. So I think he would endorse us. Short story. Did that answer your question? Yeah. Okay.
Other questions? I have one while people are thinking. So similar to, it sounds a lot like the way that we conceptualize innovation. It's very much a team sport, at least in Raphael's case. But when I think of Renaissance artists, like Da Vinci, Caravaggio, all those people, I think of like a one person. How common was this sort of team workshop, larger scale model?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the concept of an artist workshop was relatively novel in this time period. We have a couple of folks before Raphael that experiment with this. Raphael's really innovative though because the typical workshop model was we've got the head artist and he's telling everyone what to do. In the case of Raphael though, it was a professional exchange. He understood that others were better than he was at things, and he brought them into his circle and collaborated. So that example of Raimondi, he was an expert printmaker. Raphael never made a print in his life, but he knew about draftsmanship, and so he exchanged ideas, and so that's what made him, I think, particularly successful, is that he saw them as more equals than this kind of, top-down relationship. Yeah.
Thank you. Other questions?
I have one. While you walk over there. First of all, great presentation. Appreciate you being here. My question is, do you see this having other kinds of applications? Have you thought about that? And if so, what would those be?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think it really is, in my mind, it's a tool that has an incredibly diverse array of potential applications. It's begun in the realm of Renaissance art, right? But I think it can be used across any mode of artistic or cultural production. I think, again, it's a way to look at collections. If you have a collection of elements of cultural heritage, right, or design production, it can be used as a way to organize ideas or thoughts. I mean, I think it's got a lot of diverse applications. It just depends on who wants to experiment with us to see how we can refine it for those different purposes. Yeah.
Really cool work. I was wondering, as you're getting more input from other communities or within the institution, how are you validating the information that's going in or giving credit to those that are supplying that information?
That's a great question. So we've tried to be really cognizant of the material that we're importing into these spaces, right? And that's why it's really essential to have the human input and the humanist input in these conversations. So incorporating a lot of documentation and a lot of credit. We've definitely built into our data sets a lot of citations and captions and connections so that you can actually follow the breadcrumbs, right, to the other components. So we're trying to be as aware of those, again, genealogies as we can. Yeah, great question. Great question.
Let's have one last round of applause for Alexis.
Thank you.